Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 7:45 and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Howdy. How's everyone doing? Man, he's in the house. First one in the house. Steve's here. How you doing, Steve? As always, I'm telling you, big shout out to Steve. Everybody, thumbs up for all the work that this man does. Him and Walter especially. I love seeing the edits. You keep us going, dude. And for all you who are sending in the content, for allowing Steve and Walter and myself to do some of these edits, we can't thank you enough, because some of us that don't get to fish, and I'm not the only one. We live vicariously through you. So thanks for that. We couldn't do it without you. So how's everybody doing? Sonia's been busy. You've been out fishing. Nice to see you out. Nice to see you here tonight, Sonia. Must be either you're just in warming up from a cold day of fishing, or maybe you're just watching this before you head out. Either way, it's nice to have you. Nick, always a pleasure to see you. Eve's in the house. Tony, how you doing, my friend? Mark Wolf's with us. Yes, it is getting really close to walleye time, and we got an interesting video I put together for Walleye Wednesday, basically commemorating and somewhat celebrating walleye opener from the perspective of a perch. So wait till you see that on Wednesday. That was pretty cool. Had a lot of fun with Christine Lapierre, or Lapierre, as she said, one beer pair, Lapierre. And Brian Sturch. We are going to be doing a cooperative effort that we were working on last night for mindful fishing. Yeah, so some big news coming with that. Really looking forward to being able to bring that to the attention of everyone that I'm sure is now wondering what the heck is he talking about. But always a pleasure. Lloyd, great seeing you, buddy. Keep up the great work, my friend. Richard Dunlop, holy smokes. How many times have you shared this? We've only been at air 4 minutes. How many times you shared it, Richard? You're a gem, bud. You are as good as they come. Jay Pierce, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. That's an interesting logo. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm gonna have to look at your profile pic, because I like what I see. Jeanette's in the house. Nice to see you, Jeanette. I think you were late last week, so it's nice to see you here with us, and you're going to be able to spend some time tonight. We do have lots to talk about. We have, of course, the panel, our beloved Jim McLaughlin, Lawrence Gunther, and Jay Barnucz. The panel is going to be working their butts off to entertain you and provide you a whole bunch of content that I know you guys are going to think is valuable. We have a few videos that we're going to be sharing. So there is a lot of knowledge that will be shared today. We got Mike Consul's coming up next, right after I'm done with the announcements. We're going to be talking about the CFN FishOFF, and we might even have Mike reveal a prize or two or three. So stay tuned to that. That's going to be coming up right next, because really it's May 1st. Think about this. It's May 1st. Maybe in your part of the country, it looks closer to spring. I shouldn't complain. It looks like spring out there. It's just, don't we all want summer? Haven't we just sort of had enough with this? That's a logo for my wife. on our fishing. Oh, right on. Well, I like it. Nonetheless, Jay, I'm gonna have to have a look because I really like that. Steven, how you doing, buddy? Always a pleasure to see you. Where the heck did it? No kidding, Jeanette. Where the heck did April go? So on that note, let's talk about it right up front because these are the announcements that really are important. We want to make sure that we've done our very best to get the message out there because we'd love to see you folks. We have lots of events coming up. But two that I definitely want to spend some time on because the other guests are going to be spending time on the other events is, of course, the upcoming Horwood Lake CFN 5th Annual Retreat. It is an honor to be up there yet again this year at Horwood Lake, and we'd love to see you folks there. I know Doris and Warren are still awaiting your call, so make sure you book your butt in a bed so you can have some fun like some other CFNers. Have a look. As mentioned, August 14th to the 19th. Love to see you there. We had a lot of fun with the past years and the past folks that have come. We'd love to see you again. Gail always seems to catch the biggest fish, whether it's a pike or a walleye. We're hoping that Gail's up there as well. The Underwoods are always a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to seeing them there. And that, again, is August 14th to 19th. We have some dignitaries amongst the CFN ranks that are going to be showing up there. Walter's coming all the way from Saskatchewan with his son. And of course, I'm hoping that our good buddy Steve will be able to drag him up as well. Because, as I said, having the bunch of us together is usually a sign of a good time. So hopefully you're going to be there. We'll see you. If not there, we will see you at Camp McIntosh, September 22nd to the 24th. Here's some of the fish that you can enjoy, whether it's food, fun, or fishing. Horwood Lake Lodge and Camp McIntosh, they hit it out of the park every single time. Have a look. Where are you going, Don?
Camp McIntosh.
Yeah, baby. September 22nd to the 24th is the date for the the OFC Nation retreat. And we're hoping that, of course, our good buddy Moose will be joining us at the end of the show to talk about the upcoming OFC Nation Charity Cup, as well as the Lunker Bowl that CSFL will be hosting. Yeah, if you haven't attended the CFN retreat, you're 100% right, Richard. If you haven't attended the CFN, you are missing a ton of fun. It is a lot of fun, and the Dunlops alone will steal the show. I love to make the trip one day. Well, we'd love to see you, John. As I said, we will always be going somewhere. I'm hoping it will always be Camp McIntosh and Horwood Lake Lodge, but perhaps maybe a few other destinations might pop up in the future. Who knows? Spark, it's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. And with that, I am done with all of the announcements for now. Let's bring on Mike Consul to talk about the CFN FishOFF right after a word from our sponsor.
honoring past achievements as we step into the future. Elevate, innovate, reimagine. Make the best better. That's what we do. Radically redefined, the NRX Plus is the culmination of our obsessive drive to forge the most advanced fishing tools on the planet.
Mike Consul's in the house. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Scotty.
Dude, you sound different.
Yeah, look, it's I have a cold. That's why.
Oh, I thought it was the mic that was giving you the raspy voice. It was like a filter or something. Wow, unbelievable, dude. Well, listen, sick or not, again, I can't say enough about Shimano. We had the pleasure of running into Bob down at the Peterborough office, and he unloaded what is going to be a gauntlet of stuff that we're going to be giving away this year at the CFN FishOFF. I will leave it at that, and I'll let you take it from there.
All right. I am excited because we've revamped the CFN FishOFF to allow more families to participate, more ways to win, and different ways to get involved. So I'm just going to jump right into it. It is happening, Scotty. You said it's May 1st. Holy smokes. That means the CFN FishOFF is happening in 19 days, starting Victoria Day weekend, right at the stroke of midnight come Saturday, all the way to Canada Day long weekend. So 6 full weeks. So Manny, make sure to sign up. Lloyd, I want to see some of your fish. Tony, how's it going? Sonia, you are always catching fish like every week. Make sure to enter your fishes in the CFN FishOFF. What I tell people is if you're fishing any time between Victoria Day and Canada Day, sign up because you will see some amazing prizes that you will be eligible for. A couple differences, Scotty. In last year, we've always run the FishOFF in different ways, but we used to have a point system. We used to have category draws, and we used to have teams. This year, no more points. We're just going to present different multiple ways to win, and I'll get to that right now. And instead of category draws, we're going to have weekly draws, which means anything you catch in week 1, you're eligible for that weekly draw. Anything you catch in week 2, you're eligible for that weekly draw, which means just go out fishing as many times as you can every single week, because the more fish you catch that week, the greater your chances for that weekly draw. And the biggest change is rather than having pairs or teams, it is a solo event, but definitely go out with your friends, fish with your partner, but you'll be submitting your catches as an individual versus a team.
Yeah, some great feedback that we're getting already, Sonia. We have listened, we have sat back and we've watched, and we have learned, not necessarily from the errors of our ways, but just looking at ways we can improve it. Because at the end of the day, if we can't get folks to participate, then what's the point of doing it? And I will say this year, the way Mike and the team and myself have put it together, and Mike, you have done a Herculean effort to put this all together. A lot of the vision that I had going forward for this year, you have managed to incorporate that. So a big shout out to you. I know you impressed the pants off the Shimano team that listened. Of course, Bob offered up some incredible prizes, which we were going to get to. But again, Sonia, 100%, couldn't emphasize that enough. It is going to definitely be a lot easier this year. And Lloyd, this is what we want to stress. The team basis is something that we've always had, but it was because we wanted to see teams, qualify for the show. Well, there's no show this year. So this becomes an individual event. But that does not mean that we are not encouraging exactly what you're doing with Alexander. And I'll tell you this, I'm jealous.
I want to go fishing with the Henrys also.
No kidding.
All right. So a couple things. People have been asking about the kids rule. Kids rule is still in place, but there's 2 ways. Let's say I go fishing and any kids under 17 I take with me, their catches can still count towards my total submissions. Or rather than that, I could have them sign up on the app and they can sign up and register their fish as an individual. So take as many kids out fishing as you can, and either submit their catches on their own or have them submit it with you. Either way, we want you to take kids out fishing, and there is a special kids prize for all kids submissions. So, catch as many as you can and take as many kids out as possible.
100%. Well said, Mike.
Now, we still have our weekly draws. And like I said, any fish you catch that week enters you into that weekly draw. So if you catch 10 fish week 2, you get 10 ballots into the draw. If you catch 20 fish week 2, you get 20 ballots into that weekly draw. So catch as many fish as you can. Like Sonia said, it is a lot easier to get in on some amazing prizes, which we're going to get to. And this is what, we want to make it easy for the beginner anglers, the kids, plus also the master anglers. So all you got to do is catch 5 species and you'll be placed in our special 5 species draw. If you are an amazing angler and catch 10 species, that's an even higher level draw with bigger prizes. If you catch 15 species, that's an even bigger prize. So there's something for every type of angler. And if you catch 15 species, that makes you eligible for the 10 species draw or 3 ballots into the 5 species draw. If you catch 30 species, then, you get 2 ballots into the 15 species draw. So like I said, Scotty, there is something for all skill levels.
100%. And again, we've tried to make it challenging for those who want to be challenged, and we've made it pretty easy. Almost literally, you just have to catch a fish. That's it. So we've listened to both sides. We've tried to find a happy medium. And again, based on the Winter Fish Fest and some of the testing that Mike has done with the team and multi-species madness that you run, these are some of the takeaways that we've managed to implement. And I think it's going to be one of the most exciting and fun fish offs that we've had.
I've been getting messages from people outside of Ontario saying, oh my gosh, you've totally leveled the playing field now because I only have access to 10 species and this is perfect for me. So we have listened. Now for those master anglers, every time you catch a fish that tops a species leaderboard, that ballot will go into our draw. And so if I catch the biggest, let's say walleye, I catch the biggest pumpkin seed, and I catch the biggest creek chub, that's 3 ballots into the large fish draw. And we have a pretty significant, awesome prize. So you want to try to catch as many large fish as possible because for this size matters. For these draws, it's any size over our 8-inch minimum. But in order to get ballots into our large fish draw, you need to get the largest fish within that species. Next, speaking about large fish, longest fish, we have, this is probably our second biggest prize, is across 12 different species, your longest fish. So, if I was in Alberta, I'm definitely going to try to catch a sturgeon, maybe a long walleye, some sucker species. If I'm in Ontario, definitely want to catch, maybe a 40-inch carp, pike, muskie. So 12 species up to max 12. Maybe you only have access to 10, but you have 10 long species. It's the longest total length across 12 different species. And Scotty, I have some guesses who might be topping this leaderboard.
Yeah, the one individual is going to have a hard time catching 12 species, but given what we saw during the Winter Fish Fest, anything is possible when the Landrys are fishing. Anything.
Bill will be top 3 in the 12 species for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I see McLaughlin being up there. I mean, there's a few jets that I see just doing very well with this. Does the FishOFF still not account for boat users? Great question, Jay Kerman. Yes, it does. We don't encourage it, but we can't discourage it because we can't police it. There's no way we could possibly police it. So at the end of the day, it's not encouraged, but it is not discouraged either, simply because we can't control it.
Any craft, any motor, any means of fishing that is legal on that body of water is acceptable for the CFN FishOFF.
100%.
Now, this is a cool category too. This is most fish entered. You can be like Bill Landry and catch 1,000 perch. So this is any species, and you just add them all up. I could see a kid out there like rock bass after rock bass after rock bass trying to get this most fish prize pack. So go crazy. Catch as many fish as you can. It doesn't matter what species, as long as it's 8 inches, meets the minimum length, then you might be eligible for this prize pack.
So that was the only question I had in regards to that section, Mike. Is the 8-inch minimum still required for the number of fish?
Yep. So every single species, we have an 8-inch minimum, just because we want to make it a little bit challenging. Plus, we want to avoid any micro species that are, 1, might be hard to handle, 2, might be, we don't want to be measuring them, and 3, really hard to identify when they get so small. So that 8-inch minimum makes sure that they're species that are easy to handle, fun to catch, as well as easier to identify.
Right on. Jim's pointing at his watch, by the way. So
okay. So our biggest prize is our Shimano prize. Show your Shimano prize. We'll talk about that come Tourney Tuesday, but that is our biggest prize. And we're going to reveal one prize right now, Scotty. We know we're going to give away the weekly prizes for our symmetry combos, but our 5 species prize pack is going to be, drum roll please, Scotty, one of your favorite reels, Scotty, a Shimano Sidonia.
So definitely,
and that's our 5 species prize pack.
This is just the 5 species prize pack. We are, as I said, we're going to build from there. But this is a great, for anybody who just wants to enter this for a chance to win. This is a great species and a great category to involve yourself. You're going to be put on the same level as everybody else. So again, we're doing our very best to make sure that we're catering to everyone, no matter what your appetite, no matter how many species you want to target or how many species are available. You have a chance to win. All you have to do is go out and catch a fish. So thanks, Mike, for announcing that. But yes, also thanks to Shimano.
If you want to find out more, stay tuned. And Scotty, if you're free tomorrow, we could do an early Tourney Tuesday and give out some more reveals in terms of what we are offering. Last thing, Scotty, you could talk about it later. First 100 anglers, Scotty can show you the prize. We do have an early bird prize. So sign up. I was looking, there's tons of people signed up. First 100 anglers qualify and join us. Tourney Tuesdays, we'll reveal some more prizes.
100%. Thanks, Mike. Thanks so much for showing up. And of course, make sure that you register on the MyCatch app. Go to Anglers Atlas and make sure you register, because that is really important. Again, with what they're doing over at Anglers Atlas and the folks that run the MyCatch app, I'm so glad that CFN is involved like we are.
All right, Scotty. Have a good show, everyone. I'll be watching.
Right on, dude. You take care. Jim McLaughlin right after this.
Talk to me.
The one, the only, Big Jim McLaughlin. Yeah, baby. Oh, we got the flash boost. I can't see now, Jim.
New flash boost.
Oh, deep diving. Oh, look at the colors.
It's almost. I almost got myself. These hooks are stupid sharp too. Like,
I bet.
They're like scary. Here's the one I'm excited about, though.
Oh, of course. They made. Does that say especially for Jim McLaughlin? That's your bait. That's your go-to.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. They come in and they pick up a flash boost and they go like this, and I say, "Well, don't do that because the fish don't do that to look at it. It doesn't have to be bouncing around. Eh? Can you see it?
Fish don't do that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's like I love when guys show pictures of lures and they put a black light on it and say, "Look at the way that glows under a black light." Well, I've never seen a fish swimming around with a black light. Like they don't like to hear that, but it's true. And this is the one that this is just super cool if you're a walleye guy.
Oh.
I'll take this out and show you how minute this is. This is like just. I know you can't. I can't get
Dude,
the.
That looks so incredible. Wow.
But it's
I'm really wishing you hadn't showed me that, Jim.
cute little dude. But these ones here, I'm excited about these two. I'm going to go down and fish with Captain Greg Emile there on in Quinny, and I'm really excited about pulling some of that stuff around. And then there's this, but I can't show it to you until they put it out at iCast. So
Makes total sense. Well, I appreciate you showing, and I also don't appreciate you showing some of that stuff because that is a walleye slayer back in the day.
Here's a lot of guys like gold.
Like, who hasn't bought their fair share of walleye crankbaits from Cotton Cordell? I mean, who's guilty, right? Those were walleye slayers. That looks very similar to the body. But the fact that it has the flash boost inside, whoo-wee. Jim,
well, I mean, that's the original shape of the shad wrap. I mean, that's what everybody, that's a shape you have to have in your repertoire if you fish, period.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what it is. It's the shape of most of the fish. But as we all know, I like to fish for walleyes, but I'm a bass guy at heart, and bass fishing runs the world. And you can see the plate in there.
Incredible.
I look forward to those.
Who isn't? Jim, I saw something today that I thought you might be able to voice an opinion on, more so than maybe some of us. I'm not exactly sure how old it is. It might describe how we were using tube jigs prior to the tube jig actually being produced. But I'll have you look at the video. I'll have everyone take a look at the video. And the reason I'm showing this is simply because I think it can spawn a bunch of other ideas that perhaps maybe folks are doing out in the field, and they're okay sharing with it. But needless to say, let's have a look at this, Jim, and I'd love to hear your 2 cents.
Your tubes. Take and push a teardrop weight all the way into the tube. Then what you're going to do is hook through the eye of that teardrop weight. Go on your tube. Your tube's also going to sit more upright in the water. Really cool way to weight your tubes. Take and push a teardrop weight all the way into the tube. Then what you're going to do is hook through the eye of that teardrop weight. Go on your tube. Your tube's also going to sit more upright in the water.
Now, I'm going to say that is a complete weightless design, but explain to me the concept, Jim, of what they're doing there.
Well, you're just adding the weight on the outside. When we used to Texas rig tubes, bass fishing with tubes before there was all the beaver baits and all that stuff. Fishing with tubes was 25 years ago was a big thing, and we had always a rig in them. I know a lot of guys still use them to this day. I mean, I would think tubes are just about ready to cycle back around, and I'm not talking about using them for smallmouth dragon and the Great Lakes and stuff. That's here to stay, but the use of the tube, it was a monster thing, and we didn't have all the quality that we have now. We didn't have the colors. You got 4 or 5 colors of tubes, and I mean that all started when I won my second classic in Aurelia in Canada. The 3 fish I caught the last afternoon, I caught all on the tube.
Wow!
on a Bobby Garland Gets It, which was pretty well one of the original tubes, with a number 12 walleye trailer over the hook. And the fish that I caught that was almost 6 pounds, back when a 6-pounder meant something, it was hooked here.
Wow.
It was on the lip. You could see the whole tube. Like, you couldn't figure out how you had the fish, and it was on the tube because the little treble came right to the back of the tentacles. Then it was, you know how small a number 12 trailer is. And a small one, it's almost 6 pounds, 6-pound line, just in the tip of the nose here or the tip of the lip. That's all it was in. And I actually had to get the pliers to get it out. Had to pop it. Could have probably fought all day. It got in a. But when we used to fish tubes like that, we didn't use I call it a catfish sinker, a 3-way sinker, bell sinker, whatever you want to call it. There was actually little weights that were made. They looked like a little piece of flat lead. Well, they were. And they had a hole in them, a little oval hole at the top. And you put that up in the bait. And then you Texas rigged it. So you had that weight flopping around inside the tube. And then they had the Shaw Grigsby high performance hook, which used to work really, really well. I know we talked about them before. You weren't impressed with them. They didn't come with enough instructions.
Well, they didn't come with enough instructions, man. Like the scratch and sniff version wasn't in the package.
You should have spent less on the hooks and more on the book to understand it.
That's it, exactly.
Took me a few tries, let me tell you. In fact, I think Rocky eventually set me up straight on how to do it because I'd never seen it done. But then, we used to take it even one step further, Scotty. And I would take those little flat weights and I'd rub them with a piece of coarse sandpaper, and I'd put crazy glue on it and put a glass rattle on each side. I'd lay them all out flat, put the crazy glue down, put the rattle down. I'd have about a dozen or 15 of them. Then when that hardened, I'd flip them all over and do the same thing on the opposite side. So we had a rattle inside of it too. So it was really cool. That's what I just said, George.
Yep, 100%.
You must have just got here, or you turned up your hearing aid.
Okay, well, the gloves are off. No, that's awesome. And it's that kind of stuff, if there's some, advancements that you've made either yourself or you've seen, whether it be on social media or YouTube, the web, what have you. There's a lot of interesting things that folks are doing out there to retrofit some of the presentations that we have seen traditionally. This it wasn't necessarily something that I thought was new. It was new to me. I'd never seen that done before.
Yeah, and more than one person can invent something that, if you've honestly never seen it before, then you could, come up with it. It's just an idea, I've had things that I've seen other guys do, and I go, wow, just like this. I did it 25 years ago. I haven't probably done it for 15 years now, though.
Yeah.
There's just so many other things that come along with, and then some guy sitting and says, geez, But you know what? With YouTube now and all the videos you've got out there, you could Google, weedless tube rigging, and 500, little videos come up for you to watch. So it really makes a difference if you pay attention to it.
100%. Steve, that's actually a great point. I remember when Berkeley came out with their sets initially, that's exactly what we would do. And I'm sure you did it as well.
Yeah, they actually had some stuff. It was called tube paste.
Yep.
I guess to take off on toothpaste. And it came in a tube, and the tube was printed to look like a tube on top of it. Like it was just like a toothpaste thing, but they printed a tube on the package to make it, and it was called tube paste. And it was really, really thick, and it stunk, like it wasn't nice, and
that's the point I was going to make was, maybe tubes weren't that attractive as an angler if you're out in that hot sun with these stinky hands, because some of that stuff you just couldn't get off. But with this bait fuel, there's no smell. No. So yes, to your point, Steve, you could shove a whole bunch of that inside the tube, and all you're going to be doing is confusing the fish where all the bait is.
Yeah, and there was another one that came. It was the same type of thing. Geez, I wish I could remember the name of it now. And it actually came in the package. There was a separate little thing in the blister that was a little thing that looked like for putting icing on or something.
Yeah, like an applicator.
The applicator that's screwed on the tube, so you could get it right up inside the tube.
Yeah.
because it was such a mess dealing with that stuff. Because the problem with it too was that, especially with the tube stuff, was that if it was over about 85 degrees outside, it would actually melt.
Right.
With liquid, so you'd put it down, and then there'd be a splotch like this on the carpet of some greasy gut.
Yeah.
So it's like
bits of bait ball. Yeah, that's interesting, Jeremy. I don't know if anybody uses that, but yeah, it has.
We used to use Alka-Seltzers.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Absolutely. Yeah,
We used to use
100%.
Alka-Seltzers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to break them in half and push it up inside of it. You'd see a bass swimming along the shore, and throw it over. Sometimes they'd go down. You'd shake it; it would make bubbles, and there'd just be a puff of dirt, and they'd be gone. It would scare the heck out of them.
Yeah.
And other times they'd give you the old with the eye down, and then just they'd eat it. So you like that, eh?
That's awesome. I did like that. That was good. As I did this, Sonia, stuff it with cut bait like a turkey.
Okay, settle down, Sonia.
Are we gonna call it a turducken, or what are we calling that? I think finesse football jigs have replaced the tube craze. A lot less line twist. Yes, great point, actually, George. A lot less line twist with the football jigs.
Yeah, for dragon type stuff. Yeah, but when we were using these, we were fishing them weedless, skipping them into trees and stuff like that. Eh? So that's where they really worked very, very well.
Interesting idea, Corey. And then they put some cotton balls inside of a tube to hold the scent in. I like that. That's ingenious. Wow.
That's real messy, though.
Yeah, but as I said, Jim,
like doubling or tripling the mess.
Yeah,
because you had all this crap left over when you were, put it away at night.
Oh, I remember the Crackle Cup.
Yeah, I remember Crackle. Yeah.
Yes, I
remember
remember
the little pills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got hooked on those. It took me a while to get off them.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you found the light, Jim.
They worked good though. You slid them right up inside the tube. They were great.
Now, I've heard this too. Here at Kitty Kitty, some folks have gone to the extent of putting cat food in tube jigs. I can't say that it doesn't work. If it works for you, hey, all the power to you, man.
Catfish guys use a lot of cat food.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, it was interesting, Jim. I was looking at something last week in regards to chumming, and I know we chum for carp. Do we chum for catfish? Is that something that people do regularly up here?
Hey, that's something I don't know.
Yeah, I saw it, and I have to say that most of us anglers, and I don't want to single out carp anglers, but I know you chum just to better your chances. I don't know if it's looked upon as cheating from us rest of us anglers.
No, because I think what it is with chumming with the corn is you go down for 2 or 3 days in a row and you put a bunch of corn out.
Yeah,
and apparently and I don't know anything about carp fishing really. And they just get in the habit. It's food, and they come to the area looking for food. It's that type of a thing. So that's why guys do it.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Jay. I got a better look at your logo too. I like that logo. That's sharp.
You can't chum for cats.
Not legal to chum for cats. I wasn't sure. Again,
How would they prove you were doing
that? I guess just by seeing you. I don't know. That's a good question, Jim. But I didn't realize that it was illegal so much as it was just frowned upon for the sake of food rotting and pollution and various other things. But no, it's good conversation to say the absolute least. Now, Just Fishing, it's up and running. It's ready to go.
It's rocking.
It's awesome.
Doing very well. Lots of people are looking at it. We get lots of feedback on it. We got a great thing in there that our buddy from Grumpy Baits there, Martin, got us. It's a breakdown on all his beliefs on gobies and everything else, and it's really, he put a lot of work into it, a lot of time, and he wanted to get it out there. So we came to a little deal, and it's like 3 pages long, and it's very, very interesting.
That's awesome.
Because gobies are a major thing.
They are the thing.
And I don't mean the fish themselves. I mean out there, like being eaten. They're everywhere.
And do you think the fact that all these bait companies are trying to feverishly buy molds and paint special designs because they're not a food source, or they're not hot right now when it comes to most of the fish that's
I think what they're doing is they're just looking for something different.
Yep. Yeah.
Like look when plastic worms came out, and look at all the shapes we got in plastic.
And even tube jigs for that matter. I remember, first running into tube jigs, and it wasn't near the time that you did, Jim, but you couldn't keep the fish off it. And then it just seemed to peter out. And like you said, everything comes back again.
I remember going and jigging with pink and white walleye for walleye with pink and white tubes. The Rideau River, just absolutely slaying them on weed lines with pink and white. When was the last time I threw a pink and white tube in the Rideau River on a weed line?
Amen to that.
It's the way things go back and forth, the way you use them. They enjoy little periods of popularity. They sort of disappear and back they come, And then there's guys like Ricky Clun just keeps throwing a spinnerbait and keeps winning.
It's incredible. It's so true. This is interesting, and I don't know how to take George. I'm not sure if this is sarcastic. Jim, what do you think of all the poop baits coming out? Cover scat by depths and deep poop from fish, Arnie, for example. So these real things. Have you ever heard of this? Nope, can't say I have. Well, maybe Jay, when you're up next, and he's probably listening, maybe we can have you chime in, because if it has anything to do with our carp species or our cats, I know if you don't know, somebody will.
Yeah.
Somebody will. Jim, as always, dude, always an absolute pleasure to have you on. Just Fishing, just in case you guys aren't aware, head over. If you haven't got enough tonight from our good old buddy, Big Jim, make sure you go over here and have a listen and have a read of all of his friends, because they've got a lot more to offer.
There's a pile of stuff in there.
There's a pile. It's just loaded. I can't. Did you have to cut anything out of that episode, Jim?
Actually, we did. We had a couple of things changed at the last minutes, and we had to take a muskie article by Wally Robbins out. But we had debated about putting it in the spring issue anyway, because it dealt with a bit of night fishing and stuff.
Right.
And you're not muskie fishing at this time of the year. Not that you can't have an article giving you time to plan and get ready for it. But we'll have that, and it'll be perfect just for the summertime. So it's absolutely awesome.
Right on. Well, Jim, as always, buddy, thanks so much for joining us each and every Monday and being the guy you are. Someone to look up to, someone to inspire us, and someone to keep us fishing. Can't
Appreciate that. Hey, I'm going to be Saturday. I'll be at JB's on Rice Lake, or BJ's, JB's. There's so many B's and J's. Rice Lake, Bewdley, BJ's from 9 to 2 roughly.
Right on, buddy. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you there, man. Lots of hugs and kisses to all the CFNers that show up. And, of course, getting a hug from that man is like an autograph. It's like gold. Yeah, baby. Oh, beautiful. We got Lawrence Gunther coming up right after this. Jim, have yourself a great week, dude.
Be good, kiddies. Be safe.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
There he is, the one and only Lawrence Gunther. How you doing tonight, Lawrence?
I'm doing well, buddy. How are you?
Oh, living the dream, my friend, living the dream. I have to ask, one of the things that we showed in our last segment there with Jim was an interesting idea that Jim's seen many times, and I'm sure you've probably done it as well. Not something I'm familiar with, so I had to ask the panel. And I do that, of course, on behalf of everybody that may not know, maybe too afraid to know or ask. But one of the comments that came up, the sinker itself inside that tube jig, if you break off or a fish drops it, Jeremy asked, he said, are we not now just adding more lead? And that is into our water systems. And that's kind of leading into a segue of your discussion when it comes to loons.
Yeah, I mean, you package a lead inside a nice colorful bait. Is it going to be consumed by something at some point, right? Is it going to be picked off the bottom? There's a lot of soft plastic down on the bottoms of lakes now already, and, we have scientists collecting fish and doing biopsies and opening up these fish and finding, stomachs full of plastics. So is that the problem in Canada so much? Probably not so much in Canada as it is in some of the more heavily pressured fishing lakes in the United States. But the lead, is the lead a problem when it's packed inside that non-degradable piece of plastic, or is it safely tucked away in there? So I don't think that piece of lead's going to cause a problem down in the bottom of the lake somewhere. It's the little tiny pieces of lead that seem to be causing the problems. And we talked about this last week, with the loons and other ducks and aquatic birds that eat that have gizzards and have little pebbles in their gizzards to grind up the weeds they eat. And sometimes they add a little piece of split shot or a small jig into the gizzard as well by mistake, thinking it's just a piece of rock. And that lead gets emulsified and turns into a sort of a liquid and fused into their system, kills the bird. Then something else comes along and eats that dead bird. Usually it's some sort of raptor, and it's impaired with lead. And once you got lead in you, it's not coming out anytime soon. But I think we're all getting familiar with that knowledge that, this lead has a real knock-on effect. We're finding that, with copper pipe and lead solder, we don't do that in our homes or institutions anymore. We don't put lead in paint. We don't want lead in our kids' toys. We know that there's no real safe amount of lead anymore. We know that, but I think I'm guilty, like all kids who grew up, that, pinching on split shot with their teeth, using their teeth, right? Who didn't do that?
Yeah.
But I couldn't afford pliers as a kid, but I had lots of split shot that needed to go on the line, and I didn't want it sinking down and sliding down the line to the hook. So, you use your teeth, and I have to admit, it's still something I sort of, I have to be careful. I don't do that, right? It's just an automatic thing to do. But there's so many cool things coming out now. The Eagle Claw's got tons of tin weight, that's great for pan fishing. There's beautiful tungsten. There's all sorts of lead alternatives. And here's one, and it got me thinking. Palatrack, Stahn's fishing weights. And this got the 2006 award from the ICAST, in terms of the new tackle offerings. They're taking rocks and inserting swivel connectors on them and for you to use as weights, actual small pieces of rock, right? So, and they're still going strong. That was in 2006. They got the award. They're still around today. So I'm going to ask before we move on this, the legacy of lead, it's going to be a legacy. It's going to be history at some point. Do we help it move into that historical perspective? Do we fight it the whole way? Where do you want to stand when you look back in time? Where do you want to be in that storyline? How can you sort of advance things proactively before some bureaucrat comes along, creates some sort of crazy policy or rule, outlaws all lead. Next thing you know, we can't use bottom bouncers anymore, or there's no more cannonballs at the end of our downriggers, just nonsensical stuff. Think about that. And if you have some ideas, shoot us a link at bluefishcan@gmail.com. Send us some stories of your own on how you got the lead out of your tackle box. We'd love to hear those stories, share those stories. I think we can incentivize. I don't think we have to stand guard for lead. Lead's been around for a long time, but you know what? Not everything that was around a long time ago was a good thing. And we know a lot more now than we did back then. Like, there's no such safe lead.
Yeah, and there is an alternative. It is not a cost-effective one. And of course, as some of the comments are saying, what about the pellets when it comes to hunting? Obviously there's a heck of a lot more lead discharge from a shotgun shell than there is from a lead sinker. You probably get a little bit more life out of a lead sinker than you necessarily would of a shotgun, because once it's dispersed, it's done.
Yeah.
It's wherever you've left it. But needless to say, it all depends on whether folks have the appetite. I know this was something that was visited back in the late 80s, early 90s, when it came to the loons, and there was a big concern that it was killing all the loons. We've managed to live through that, but like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because we've been doing it for the last 25 years makes it right. But what's this? I don't believe there is any lead in shot. Yes, you're right. Actually, Jim, I'm so glad you brought that up. Actually, there is less and less lead in shotgun shells now. But over the years, I would say that we've dispersed enough lead that now that there isn't, hunters have made that decision. They've made that change in direction. So yeah, maybe it is a thought. There is alternative available. There are available alternatives. So if it's you as an angler that has to make those choices, and it's not cost effective necessarily or easy.
Well, Margie Manthe is made it her passion, her to get the lead out, and she's got lake associations working with her. She's the director of fisheries for the Wolf Lake Association. Last year they collected 80 kilos of lead fishing tackle, handed out some $10 coupons. A lot of the anglers didn't even want the coupons. They're just happy to find a place to drop off their lead tackle and get it out of their tackle box once and for all. So there's ways of incentivizing, there's ways of motivating. And there are alternatives out there now. Like tungsten sure is expensive, but tin not so much. And how much lead, split shot, you really go through in a year, anyways, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the thing that keeps you from fishing. It's probably the cheapest bit of tackle in our tackle box, and yet it's the thing that raises the most ire. It really steams us up and I think because if you look at a lot of the articles that have been written about lead fishing tackle and loon mortality and things like that by scientists and others and environmentalists, you can see it's not that difficult to see that the animosity towards angling in general was just below the surface, right?
100%.
Or on the surface, it was there clearly to be seen. Mm-hmm. So we see. Getting the lead out means getting the anglers off the lakes and rivers too. So for some of these people, it's a thin edge of the wedge. So,
listen, we have it easy as anglers. Hunters, that is a steeper hill to climb when it comes to exercising your right or professing your right to perform hunting, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it. But obviously, based on what I'm hearing, Richard Dunlop has mentioned that. It's illegal now to use lead shots with hunting ducks. No. Jay mentioned the same thing. I thought bird shots had to be steel. So we've made strides to change things. Now, is this a cost effective, or is a steel shotgun shell the same as it was with its lead counterpart? Was there a big change in expense to the hunter? These are things I don't know because I've never hunted, so I honestly don't know, and I'm learning through you guys. John, great point. I work in the gas industry, and we've seen our fair share of lead, to say the absolute least. But our industry is getting away from that. They've understood, just like Lawrence has mentioned. Just because we've been doing it for years and it's been around us doesn't necessarily make it right. So if we can make changes, subtle changes, because we know lead's not good for us, and Bell Canada is one example of how that was done. So thanks for sharing that, John. All right, Lawrence.
Yeah,
you got a lot of other snippets.
All right, buddy. Let's do it. People traveling the world to catch different species of fish, right? These micro anglers. Like this is a fast-growing trend, my friend. I've talked to some of these people that have 700-800 species on their catch list. And a lot of them really focus down to these smaller size fish because there are so many more diverse species of them that you can catch in different areas. You don't need a boat. You can often catch them along shorelines. So, but it's a way of life, right? Like fishing is a way of life for everyone listening to the show, watching the show for sure. But it's a different way of life. This isn't about trophy pictures. This isn't about bragging rights for, big fish. These people photograph the fish on their hand, in the palm of their hand, so you can get an idea of the size of the fish. They post them onto Facebook pages. They have experts they go to for identification. They travel around the world. They keep like bird watchers. They keep a list of all the different species they've captured and recorded. And they're really amateur biologists in every sense of the word. They learn how to identify. They learn the habits of these little fish. And but what is it like? Could I see myself doing that? Tying on a number 28 size single hook on a piece of 1 pound test monofilament, right? That's pretty tidy stuff.
Yeah, and we've had the pleasure of watching some incredible anglers do exactly what you're describing and are still doing it. whether the fish off is running or not. They have this. It is a different kind of passion than folks who just like to angle. These folks are driven. Kenneth C is someone that I speak about at great length when it comes to this, and I forget what he's up to now. He's 700-800 species, I think. I'm not really 100% sure, but it's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
To think there's that many species, first of all. I mean, I guess I'm not that surprised when you take in the saltwater species as well. I mean, I can't begin. We're still inventing and discovering new species each and every day. So I'm not surprised that there's lots of species in our saltwater, but freshwater, like it blows my mind what folks are able to pull out of some of these lakes. So yeah, no, very, very, very cool. And I tip my hat to you folks because you're driven differently than the rest of us.
Yeah, Dr. Stephen Cook from Carleton University, he wrote a paper in 2021 on, asking some questions. Is this Tankara kind of fishing? Is it threatening these small fisheries that, putting these little fish at risk? And he says, maybe what we need is to identify scientifically a few more fish handling best practices, right? Like when you're putting that little fish on your hand, is your hand wet before you put it on your hand, right? Because we know dry hands take the slime off fish, and it's a bit of a death sentence. So he's not saying don't do it. He's just saying, like every scientist, and he's a great one, let's make sure we've taken a scientific approach to this to minimize any risks associated with it. And I'm sure he's looking for some money, but can you imagine going to a granting organization and saying, yeah, we want to make sure that these handful of people that are catching these tiny fish the size of your finger, that those little fish are going back healthy. And there are people going, why are they catching these fish?
Yeah.
But he'll get there. He'll get there.
100%. And, it's great because, of course, what it does, especially each and every year that we drive the fish out, is it pushes us to learn more about the species. Every year we are faced with at least 2 new species that we have never either caught before or seen any of our participants catch. So, again, multi-species and those small subspecies. Nick just mentioned he loves it. And there's a lot of others like Nick that do. And as I said, tip my hat to you because it's a kind of fishing that I don't know if I'd have the patience for. I don't know.
But grandkids, you're talking fishing rods are 3-4 feet long, and just a stick with a line tied to the end, no reel. So there's no tangling. So you got a bunch of grandkids, small children. What a great way to just investigate a little stream next to your campsite, right? Or just a bit of shoreline down by near your home or in the city. You can do this. You can do this.
100%. 100%. All right.
So Lake Winnipeg, Iceland community is putting together a memorial museum for fishers that have been killed on Lake Winnipeg. Lake Winnipeg is the 11th largest freshwater lake in the world. And it can be quite dangerous. It's a shallow lake. For long stretches of shoreline, there's no place to pull out if you're in a small boat. It's just a sheer rock cliff. So if you get caught out there, you're not going to have a safe refuge anywhere. You're just going to have to beat against the waves. And no one knows how many fishers, commercial, recreational, indigenous, have been killed on Lake Winnipeg. But there's a person now doing research on all this and putting a memorial together. I think it's sad, but it's wonderful. That fishing is the most deadliest profession in the world, right? Like agriculture farming is the most disabling profession in the world. If you're going to lose an arm, a hand, a finger, a leg, and a piece of machinery, it's going to be on a farm. But if you're going to lose your life, it's going to be fishing.
Yep, 100%. And yes, it is something that we don't have to be scared of water, but we certainly have to respect it because it doesn't matter what it is in the world. Water is by far the most powerful and can be the most dangerous element that we deal with on a regular basis. And if you don't know, take a look at some of the flooding that goes on. Take a look at some of these high pressured cutters that are able to cut through, 6 feet of rock. There's nothing that stops water. I remember that being told that as a kid. Don't learn too much about fuels and anything else. The most powerful substance we have on this earth is water.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention when it freezes. I mean, that's a whole nother game.
You split rocks with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but in terms of danger, Lake Winnipeg, if folks haven't fished it, and I haven't, I've had a lot of people who I know fish it, and they call it Big Windy for a reason, and it's not to scare people. It's just to show respect for that body of water. That when the wind is forecasted to kick up, you hang on. Go to YouTube. Look at some of the windstorms that these folks get into. And if you've ever been in a windstorm on Simcoe or anywhere else when you've been ice fishing,
Nipissing.
Yeah. I'm not taking anything away from it, because all windstorms can be treacherous, but the ones that kick up on Winnipeg, because there's nothing sheltering it. There's like nothing. It's as flat as it comes.
Big. It's a big lake. Yeah, big lake. It's not just a bunch of islands and bays. It's just a big 11th largest lake in the world. Right here in the middle of Canada, middle of North America. Right? It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
100%. Right on.
Hey, yeah. So I got this thing here. This is about fishing, but it's more commercial fishing. Well, maybe now it's more about poaching, and I'm talking glass eels on the East Coast. It's when you get $5,000 for 1 kilo of these glass eels, and a glass eel can be maybe as long as your pinky, and it's clear and they're thin. There's the baby eels that were born out in the Sargasso Sea, and they're coming back up towards the rivers, and they're drifting back towards the shore, and then they're going to swim up the rivers and live the rest of their lives up in our rivers, and then head down before they die and go back out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and spawn and die. But the Japanese want these baby glass eels alive, and they're willing to pay $4,000 to $5,000 a kilo, and then they raise them, on special diets, no doubt, right? And in special tanks, and and they raise them and they grow them and then they eat them, but they want them, and when you can catch these things. So they started fishing for them. The whole thing went off the rails. People were poaching. People were fishing without licenses. So the Minister of Fisheries, DFO, said, "Okay, everyone, we're taking a pause for a 45-day pause." That was just before the strike, right? So then everyone went on strike. So who's supposed to do the enforcement? All these DFO officials that are now on strike, and they're going to just do things that have to do with food safety, making sure people don't harvest, clams and mussels and things like that are in red tide zones that could kill people. They're not going to get involved with conservation stuff. They're on strike. So there's tons of pictures of people just out there netting these glass eels illegally, and there's nothing being done about it. And okay, everyone needs to make a living, but when we know, the eels are endangered on the Great Lakes, we've lost 99% of the eel biomass in the Great Lakes and the rivers up here, and then we think, well, and then they're down there scooping them out of the rivers before they even have a chance to come back up, and for pure profit. It's just the Wild West, my friend. It's the Wild West on the East Coast.
Well, yeah, and I want to say it's better than it used to be. Some would argue that it's not, because it's not being policed, because a lot of the inland fishery is still closed. But I want to say that the practices in place, you can't hide like you used to be able to. People love exposing folks that are doing things illegally and wrong. So I don't know. It's a different environment. It was an eye-opening experience when all of that was going on with a lot of the international countries coming into our waterways, and we're accused of stripping us of all our resources. But yeah, I don't know. Not only is it one of life's most dangerous jobs, but now you're dealing with the animosity and negativity and anger element as well. So
dividing up the pie and who gets the share, and and people who claim that it's all theirs, and it belongs to us. It doesn't belong to you anyway. So we're just taking because it's our right. And then who's doing the conservation, right? When everyone's got their elbows up fighting over quotas and shares, who's doing the conservation? Who's paying attention to that? No 100%. One. No one. 100%. Hey, here's a question. Here's an ethical question for all of us. And I think we've all been in, this is weird, but I think we've all now experienced this challenge, this ethical challenge. When we see these fish farm operations on freshwater lakes like Manitoulin Lake, or out here in Lewiston Lake in Port Alberni, Vancouver Island, where you see these fish farms happening in these closed kind of lakes, and then there's escape fish because of storms or whatever,
Yep.
And these are genetically engineered fish to grow big and fat. They're not fast. They're not necessarily, horny. They're not going to be focused on spawning 100%, getting the job done. They just want to eat. And who doesn't want to catch one of these big behemoths, right? They're easy to catch. They roam around in large numbers. They're stupid as doornails. They have no idea. They're used to eating kibble. There's even fly shops that tie flies that look like kibble. So you can catch these on a fly rod. So, there's targeted baits, poop baits. You call them poop baits? I don't know. Maybe that's where this comes from. But is it right for us to want to catch one of these fish when we hear about these breakouts? When we know that it's happening? Is it, or should we be protesting this because of the genetic, diffusion of the wild fish stocks, and then the pressure these giant fish put on the native fish by consuming all the food in the food web and starving out, the native fish, because all of a sudden they show up like bullies, at a soccer game or something, and just thousands of them take over. It's a weird ethical dilemma that, our generation is experiencing. I don't think this happened ever before, but it's happening, and it's happening more often.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we don't have too many civilizations that live on water, and I'm sure if they did, they'd have to move from time to time, because it's exactly what these nets need to do every once in a while.
There's that too.
So does the food. So at the end of the day, we definitely we don't live like that ourselves. And I've always been a huge proponent of aquaculture on land because, of course, of runoff. If you get into these weather events that perhaps might end up doing unwanted stocking, if we set it up on land, there's ways to control it. If we're doing it right. And the biggest thing for me is the management of the water. So at least on land, you can do that. Out in the big water, it's impossible.
No. Speaking of big water, last week we talked about my buddy Chris Harvey Clark and his encounter with a 13, 14-foot great white shark off the coast of Nova Scotia. Yeah. So OSARC, it's the Canadian-American organization that does research on tracking great white sharks. They're going out of North Carolina to the Outer Banks to study the great whites there. That's where they overwinter and stage in early spring before heading north. So you know what? It wasn't that long ago. They didn't know that the great whites even gathered out there and what numbers. They're just starting to understand it. And then they had no idea where they went. Now we know where they're going. They're gathering there. They're heading north along the Atlantic coast, east coast of North America. They're staging off North Carolina, off the Outer Banks in late winter, early spring. They're going to study them there, try to track it and tag as many as they can, and then follow them north into Canada for their summer feeding season. They'll arrive in Canada in late June, and they'll stay until September, October, until the water temperatures drop off, and they want to head off into other, feeding areas and warmer areas, whatever. But yes, we were starting to put the picture together of the movement of these great white sharks. It's quite astonishing.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm on the other side. Are we learning more, or are we getting more confused about their behavior? Because we are starting to see them show up, and maybe they've always been there, we just didn't know. But especially the Florida coast, you see the number of catches that are being caught on video of great whites lining all of the shorelines of Florida, whether it's the Gulf Coast or on the Atlantic side. Is it just me, or is this an anomaly, or can we somehow figure it out with what we know?
I think we're figuring it out, and I think the ecosystem is restoring to full health. Yeah, we don't have the cod back as way we want them. There's a lot of species in decline. But, I was just reading National Fisheries report for the United States for recreational, commercial, indigenous fishing. They've added more fish species to the list of under-harvested, underutilized, that are fully sustainably being caught. That list is growing. The list of fish that are being over-harvested or at risk is shrinking. In every sense. The Americans are getting the fisheries every year they're chipping away at it, and they're turning the clock, back to the way it was. And we see this now. We see this more and more, that the ecosystem is being restored to its full balance with the apex predators at the top and all the prey fish at the bottom. It's quite impressive. We've turned the corner and we're rebuilding. Canada is there's a lot more work. There was a really interesting article in the Globe and Mail that came out and said, look, if we could be one of the most prolific producers of seafood in the world if we just cared about how we did it. And we took care to make sure we didn't overharvest. We took care to make sure that fish species that were good to be harvested were harvested, and we managed it properly, and we had the knowledge to do it. So this is an article in the Globe and Mail. At the same time, Oceana Canada, which looks at our seafood industry and says it can be done sustainably. We can feed the world's population with seafood if we do it right. And they're saying, we still need a lot more research. We're only really understanding about 30% of the commercial fishing activity in Canada is understood at this point. There's the other 70% of commercial fish that are or are not being harvested. But we just don't know if it's being done properly. So we're not catching up to the United States. We have turned the corner ourselves in Canada, and it's getting better, but we've got a lot of catching up to do compared to the Americans. And the Americans, I think, are leading in the world. So lots to be proud of, lots more work to be done. But, the fact that these great whites have decided to come and visit Canada because, it's an ecosystem that can support them. And that's something we can be proud of, even if it means putting our little, surfboards away.
100%. And to Steve's point, you're right. With the protection of seals on our East Coast, let's face it, there is a heightened food supply there that hasn't been there like it has been in the past. And Corey, I would have 100% agreed with you. It wouldn't even been an argument when it comes to the numbers of great whites on our West Coast compared to our East. All I will say is on the East Coast, we're starting to catch up. I know you've got sanctuaries there on the West Coast. There are infirmaries that they have for young great whites, so it's a protected area. It's new to us. I mean, I would say, Lawrence, right? Great whites on our East Coast. It's kind of new to us to know.
New to ours, but they were there when the people came to North America. When the first explorers came to North America, they were there. 100%. The great whites were there. Oh yeah. It was a fully balanced ecosystem, just like with wolves on land. They had the sharks in the water, and they had lots of fish and lots of seals, and everything was. If you can keep the seal population down, if the great whites can keep the seal population down, then the fish population does well, right? So it was a fully balanced system. Yeah.
One thing that I've been watching and following, and I've never had it. I'm so looking forward to my first crawfish boil. But when you see the ethical harvest of crawfish down in Louisiana and the far south in the States, and you hear these farmers talk passionately about how they control, how they protect, how they make sure that they after they're done the harvesting, they're seeding new grass. Like they've got it down to an absolute science. And again, I've got a fascination when it comes to aquaculture and how it's done and how we can make it better. But I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to my first crawfish boil.
Yeah. We had a pond, and we used to pull them out of that pond and boil them up. It's just like eating really, subtle lobster, right? They're yummy. It's like a shrimp. Is it a shrimp or is it a lobster? Size of a shrimp, but it tastes like a lobster. It's fantastic.
Not sure if anybody's had one, if you've enjoyed it, but I will say we might even have a meet and greet and do a crawfish boil.
That'd be great.
Lawrence,
I got one more story.
One more? Okay, you go ahead, buddy.
All right. So here's something interesting. We always hear about this great garbage patch out in the Pacific Ocean, right? Mm-hmm. This giant spew of plastic floating around.
Plastic? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. All the plastic floating around out there. Well, it turns out there's all sorts of, there are thousands and thousands of species of life that are hitching a ride on this plastic, that they've turned it into their own little island paradise. And they're using it to float across the Pacific Ocean. and come to new territory. This is the next gateway, my friend, for invasive species.
Now, and it's I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. That whole island of garbage, really, it's really disappointing, disheartening. And yes, we could go down that road. I don't want to. We got to clean up our acts. And as just said, we talk about carbon. We talk about all kinds of initiatives that we're doing here in Canada. Clean up our own backyard. But really, at the end of the day, if we're in this, I will say this based on our population, we're in this little pie-shaped area of the world, and the rest of the world continues to do what they're doing. And I'm not going to point fingers or accuse certain countries, but if the rest of the world continues to do what they're doing, yeah, it's great that we can pat ourselves on the back and say that we're being ethical and thinking about pollution and the environment. But listening to this, islands of plastic that are now a gateway for invasive species, and that's never good. When you hear invasive, it's a negative thing, right? It's never a positive thing. I don't know. It's disheartening to a certain degree that stuff's happening, and there's really not much we can do about it.
No, but there isn't. But it gives us a new motivation to say, you know what, maybe we got to stop contributing to these islands of garbage, right? And really find a way to deal with that and deal with our plastic dependency. I'm not saying we'll ever get rid of plastic. We'll always need plastic, for sure we will. But we just have to deal with it more responsibly. Anyways, buddy, that's I think we did a good kick at the can tonight, my friend.
You do, and there's a lot of great comments here that I'll invite you to go back over here at the end of your segment. Some really good stuff. Sorry that it's near the end of yours, but we'll maybe go through it and pick up on it next week. But until then, if you haven't listened to this podcast here on CFN or Scotty's Outdoors, make sure you go over to Bluefish Canada and Bluefish Radio. All of these segments, if you missed them, are there and available. So you can hear Lawrence and I talk till the cows come home or you fall asleep.
while you're riding your bike to work or taking the bus, you're cleaning 100%. Your house, whatever, tying your flies.
100%. Well, as always, Lawrence, thanks so much for joining us, and great job, great work, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. Jay Barnucz, right after a word from his sponsor.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world.
Okay, just waiting for Jay to pop on. While we're doing that, I don't see Moose showing up. So I just wanted to mention this, folks. If you're interested in competing in something that Moose came on and talked about last week and the week before, May 20th, Balsam Lake. And I don't even, you can hear me good. On Balsam Lake, we are having our OFC Nation charity tournament, but it's going to be running in tandem with CSFL's Lunker Bowl. We would absolutely love to see you there. All the information is on the post. Again, I invite everyone to read it so you have it. This is where you register, csfl.ca/registration. Love to see you there. Not 100% sure how many folks have entered, but we are going to provide you food. There's going to be a host of prizes, some grab bags, and, of course, a lot of fun because we are going to have a bunch of people. Jay Barnucz, how you doing, Jay?
I'm doing good, Scotty. How are you doing?
Fantastic, dude. Thank you for letting me get that done. That was awesome. I don't even know what. See, this is the best part of your segment.
Well, so, dude,
I don't even know where to start.
Your shout out to CSFL is perfect for what I want to talk about to start. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. I just put a link in the chat actually, and if you want to highlight that. So I came across an interesting event today, and it's called the first annual Fish Fry and Pike Conservation Effort by Muskies Canada Barrie Chapter. And so the weekend before the CSFL event, this club is hosting a pike tournament on Balsam, and they're asking anglers who's participating to bring their pike in at 1:30 to have a fish fry. It's not live release. We know that northern pike. So just for folks that aren't familiar with Balsam Lake and the town of Cobeconk is at the very top of the Trent Severn waterway. So everything else is downhill from either side. So whether you're going to Lake Simcoe or whether you're going to Trenton, everything is at the top of Cobeconk. And there was probably one of the last lakes to get invasive northern pike. Northern pike have come in naturally into the Trent system. They're native to Georgian Bay, Lake Simcoe area. They're native to Bay of Quinte, but they're not native to the Trent Severn waterway itself, which was man-made. And so a lot of fish have worked its way through that system. So black crappie is an example. Bluegill is another example. There's records showing bluegill invasion, and northern pike have come through, and northern pike seem to be having a negative impact on muskie populations on inland lakes. I think what you'll see is that muskies coexist well with northern pike in the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes connecting rivers, so like the St. Lawrence, the Detroit, St. Clair rivers. But something goes on with them, and there's a lot more competition between those two species in smaller inland lakes. And so Barrie Chapter is having a fish fry, which really I thought I'm not against it. I think it's great. It just goes against the grain a little bit, doesn't it, Scotty, for what we promote and what we do.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because I mentioned it to Andy and Moose when we were talking about this, that what about a catch and keep? Because I mean, let's face it, we all know that there's a bunch of pike in that system that aren't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And Andy, I have to say, buddy, he just said, Scott, as much as I'd love to help out, I just think it would give the wrong image. And he has perfect right to say so.
Yeah.
And now
to it for sure.
Make sure you sign up for the CSFL Lunker Bowl, because if this is the case and they are going to be hit pretty hard the weekend before, there's a lot up for grabs. Unless you are, very well versed on that lake and know where they seem to hang out, at the end of the day, this could be a great opportunity for you to take home a prize. So May 20th, make sure you circle it. It's just around the corner. Love to see you there. As I said, great segue, Jay, as always, my friend.
There's a few things going on that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And, Scotty, you and I always talk about the weather. And I feel like we're a couple of old men hanging out the front window at Tim's on a Tuesday morning, bitching about the weather. But I'm going to tell you right now, the weather is worth complaining about. They just released on the Weather Network their sort of weather trends for May and what's going to happen in the month of May. And there's this massive low pressure system that's just settled over southern Ontario. And we are going to see this below seasonal weather for the next couple of weeks. And it looks like maybe not this weekend, the following weekend, we might see a little reprieve from that. But we're going to be in these cooler, rainy temps and more rain, more high water. I'm hearing lots of stories about Jim and I. We were talking in the pre-show about high water levels where he is. My buddy Mike up in Barry's Bay, where we cottage in the summer, he was sitting on his beach in front of the cottage having a drink, took a picture of the lake, and I could just barely see his dock. It's just under the water, like the whole dock. So there's lots of high water. There's lots of water out there. Even the creeks around here that I've been fishing, I went out and did some brook trout fishing yesterday, and some of the brook trout, these are little, honestly, Scotty, these are little ditches. You're talking maybe 10 feet wide, right? But this time of year, typically they're like half full of water. Like they're full. Full. They're not muddy though. They're not from if it had recently, it's been raining so much, everything's just full. It's amazing how much water we have right now, even down here. And so now, just so everyone knows, the Great Lakes are regulated. They're a regulated system. Sometimes I think the regulators aren't great at regulating it, but we will see, typically we don't see our high water peak until June 1st. June is usually when water peaks in the Great Lakes, and the rest of the summer is kind of a slide downhill. So there's more water coming through the system. Now, for our folks out in the West, all this doom and gloom I'm talking about for Eastern. And did I lose you?
Yeah, just froze up. It's all good, dude. Can you hear me?
All right, we're good. So, they're going to see some warm weather, and there's folks, a buddy of mine who's a guide in Minnesota, they're still going through ice out. He can't get on the lake yet, right? Because there's been so much ice. So some of our friends in the Midwest and the West are going to see a reprieve from all this cold weather we've been having. So, there's some interesting trends going on out there.
100%. Richard Elliott is saying that Lake Huron is down a couple feet.
Wow.
Wow.
So, it wasn't that long ago where Lake Huron has been high for a while, but was down for a long period of time, right? So that's really interesting as well. Thanks for that update, Richard. I haven't seen any photos of it yet.
100%. Sonia's been
Scotty,
walking over Cooksville Creek, and it's looking great. So that's good news.
There's lots of water out there. Like we were talking about Steelhead last week, and this cooler temperatures might keep some of these rainbows around for a while. I'm curious about the dropbacks, and with all the rain we've had, I'm sure there'll be a lot of them making the exodus to the lake. But as long as the temperatures stay cool, they might hang around for a bit longer and keep anglers entertained. Although it seems to be a quick end to our steelhead season for the spring version of it anyways.
100%.
Now, Scotty, you and I always talk about Cisco's, and it's come up topic many times. Well, our friend Gord Pizer gave a great seminar this past week through Cabela's Canada, and everyone should bookmark this link and save it. If you are into fishing, especially in shield lakes that have Cisco, so typically lakes that are, you're looking at lakes that need some good deep water areas, 50, 60, 80 or more feet of water. And if you're chasing walleye, you're chasing muskie, you're chasing northern pike, you got to be on the Cisco bite. And I can speak from personal experience. All the years I used to travel up to Quebec, central Quebec, fishing the Goyne Reservoir for walleye and lakes around there. Cisco was the primary forage fish. All the walleye were coughing up Cisco's if you caught them deep. And we would go up there typically late summer, early fall. And dude, we would bottom bounce, typically back trolling, worm harnesses. But the key to it though was we had to get those worm harnesses down 25 feet, give or take 5 feet. So we were fishing from 20 to 30 feet because that's where the thermocline was. And the thermocline, the Cisco's would be sitting near the thermocline where the schools of walleye were. So now they're not sitting over no man's land. They're not out over deep water suspended necessarily. But what you did was you found a rock point or a saddle that sort of was close to that deep water, and Gord stresses that in his seminar. Good structure, close to deep water, and then basically use your electronics to find those schools of fish, but you got to get down to them. And it's not uncommon to have to go down 25 to 30 feet to get to some of those walleye. Walleye don't like really cold water. So with Cisco's, they're a deep water fish. They like the cold water. They're actually they're a cousin to the salmon and trout family. So they're going to be at that thermocline or below typically. So lake trout will come up for them. Walleye and pike and muskie will typically go down for them. But what's interesting, and people may not realize this, is that at night, Cisco's are diurnal. So what they'll do is they'll come up at night. They will risk going above the thermocline into that warmer water where they don't like it as much to feed on invertebrates. So if there's a mayfly hatch happening, Cisco's will come up at night to feed. And this is one reason why in shield lakes, why we think walleye they're nocturnal, but they will feed on these Cisco's in shallower habitats through the night. And there's also talk about suspended pike and suspended muskie, where you have a nice hump that drops into deep water. They'll move off that hump just above that thermocline to intercept Cisco's as they're coming up to feed at night. So yeah, there's some great information that Gord shares. It's almost an hour long. It's a really, really, really good seminar. So I suggest giving it a listen if you guys get a chance.
And George is reminding us lots of Cisco research talks at the AGLR conference in Toronto next week. So I would imagine would Gord be going down to this conference?
No, I don't think so. The IAGLR is the International Association for Great Lakes Researchers, and it's a conference that's held annually. It moves around a lot. It's in Toronto next week, and Cisco's are a hot topic. They're we could talk about the benefits of like smelt versus Cisco in terms of a prey base, or let's talk about alewife, right? These are all prey bases that we've heard of in the Great Lakes, and it's been shown that Cisco's, because they're the native prey base, they are more tolerant of a changing climate. They're more tolerant and of a lot of environmental issues that smelt and alewife are not good at dealing with. And so there's been a real push to bring back that native forage base for all of our Great Lakes predators. And I know there's a lot of talks discussing that. And there's a lot of those talks aren't just research around food web dynamics. There's also talks around actually stocking Ciscos, breeding Ciscos and releasing them back out into the wild. There's some really cool research going on.
100%. And as you mentioned, if you were a walleye angler, especially in a shield lake, where the Ciscos are, because if you're not where they are, you're not catching walleye. But when it comes to a forage base, especially in our shield lakes, I don't think there's a better source of fat, energy, and protein available from any other species or subspecies of fish that would be considered forage based. And Cisco, we can certainly consider them a target species, a sport fish species to a certain degree, because I know there's lots of folks that love to eat them and smoke them and what have you. But when it comes to our sport fish, our top predator, apex predators, as they would say,
like they're a real legacy species, right, Scotty? Like there's a lot of history in North America, especially northern North America. Like Ciscos are really only found in the deepest, coldest lakes that we have, and typically lakes that were glaciated. So lakes that were made by glaciers, and they're deep enough to stratify and keep those cold habitats. So, you don't see a lot of lakes in Canada, let's say, that if they're shallower than probably 20 feet, on average depth of 20 feet, you don't see a lot of stratification. Stratifications, for folks that don't know, is you get that warm water on top, you get a thermocline, and that cold water down below. But there's so many lakes in Canada that stratify, and Ciscos are the main forage base in a lot of these lakes, especially up in northern Canada. And Ciscos, dude, we're talking, do you want like a burger or do you want prime rib? Ciscos can get, like blackfin Cisco can get to be a couple of kilograms in size, versus smelt and versus alewife. And Ciscos are long lived. They live many years. They spawn many times, whereas smaller body prey don't do that. So Ciscos have a lot of advantages, and there's a real push in the fisheries field to bring them back.
Well, and I think there's always been a big push to say to make it a suggestion that they were probably one of the first fish to arrive in our deep water Great Lakes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And they're not found anywhere south of here. Like, they're a really unique fish in North America. They really, truly are. And in fact, they're so hard to tell apart that a lot of researchers don't refer to them as different species. And they refer to Ciscos as a flock of animals, because they're genetically speciated. So they've separated a little, but it's not conclusive. And so in some lakes, there's different forms of Cisco because they've been isolated. I know a couple lakes in Algonquin Park that have some unique Cisco shapes, and they believe because those lakes have been isolated for 7,000 or 8,000 years in some of the park lakes, some of the deeper park lakes, especially in the central part of Algonquin, in some of the really deep lakes and the highest elevations.
I love what George has mentioned. That's going to be there will be a Lake Nipissing Cisco talk, and one looking at Cisco sizes in lakes with walleye compared to those with lake trout. Now, if you were a betting man, would you bet that the size of Ciscos? I mean, obviously, it's governed by the size of the body of water, but walleye, I would say predominantly walleye lakes that have Ciscos in them. Do you think the Ciscos will grow larger or smaller? Do you think their numbers would be less than in, say, lake trout lakes? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many factors at play, with the Cisco's, and there's different forms of Cisco's, right? So I don't know. I'm interested. I'm gonna have to look up the abstract for that talk, George. Maybe bring it back to the show because I'm really interested to hear what they have to say. Because if we're talking like Nipissing, I would assume it's mostly like the traditional Cisco, which everyone's familiar with, like lake herring, Coregonus ardidii, which is the lake herring. But there's so many other forms, and the further north you go, the more dynamic those forms can be. I've seen blackfin Cisco's, I've seen short jaw Cisco's, short nose Cisco's, kai. You've heard of kai, bloater, all these different types of Cisco's. They all look kind of the same, but some of them get really big, and there's so many different factors that play into that. So yeah, George, I'm gonna have to look that up. So he says here, we find big Cisco walleye lakes and small Cisco and lake trout lakes. Like, oh, interesting. So possibly in walleye lakes, I'm going to guess that maybe the Cisco's are growing bigger because they're not the primary forage for walleye. Walleye will eat them, but walleye are a little more, I'm going to say, adaptable to their forage. Whereas lake trout, living in those deeper environments, they might have a limited food source. They're not going to go wander around the shallows in summertime and feed on perch and rock bass and other small-bodied fishes. So
yeah, and I would agree with George. I mean, it only makes sense. Obviously, a lake trout lake is probably deeper and a lot colder. Cisco will be on top of the lake, the lake trout, really. So the lake trout don't necessarily have anything else to target as a forage base. To your point, Jay, I mean, let's face it, walleye will target just about anything. And would prefer those warm water scenarios where they can ambush at night. So yeah, I'd have to agree. There'd definitely be larger, more evasive Cisco that are able to get away from the walleye than say in lake trout lakes. So no, thanks George for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, George. So I'm going to jump to another topic. It's just a local event, a little shout out. I know that we just talked about pike tournaments. I don't know why I didn't bring it up at the beginning of the show, but the 2023 Long Point Bay Spring Pike Tournament, which is hosted by the Long Point Bay Anglers Association. Trevor and I are going to be helping out on that. It's actually that event occurs on May 13th, which is I believe it's the 13th, which is the Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. So, and that what's neat about that event is that after that event on May 15th, the Inner Bay of Long Point, half the Inner Bay closes for a fish sanctuary. One of the largest fish sanctuaries actually in the Great Lakes Basin that I'm aware of, and it's to protect the smallmouth bass spawn. So that pike tournament is, we usually get about 40 teams a year. And I'm taking Trevor and his buddy Owen. They're going to go get some volunteer hours. And so John is on here tonight from Long Point Bay Anglers. So shout out to John and all the great work that the Long Point Bay Anglers do. And in the last couple of years, the LPBA has teamed up with the Erie Bassmasters to co-host that event. So yeah, we'll be down there weighing pike and writing weights up on the board. It's old school, man. Picture it, Scotty. Big whiteboard in front of the marina. We got some scales. We got people running fish around. And now pike don't release as well as bass do, but we still have a very high release rate. It's probably greater than about, I bet you the mortality rate's around 15%, whereas with bass it's about 5%. But nothing's wasted. There's spring pike is actually a popular food fish down here along Lake Erie, and none of those pike are wasted. And the anglers do their best to take care of them. But yeah, it's I think having pike this time of year is a great time of year to have pike. Even any time where it's cooler water, pike is a great eating fish.
Now, as we've known, and you've participated along with Trevor and Owen in the CFN FishOFF, and of course all of the species and those subspecies, those forward bases that we're talking about, like Cisco's and what have you, and targeting those. One of the things we struggle with all the time, of course, is fish identification. And I ran across an app today that has a built-in fish identifier in the app itself. I'll play this with you. So the the app costs money. If
Yeah.
for those who are interested in looking at it, so you have a 7-day trial. If you do want it, we're not endorsed by these guys. It was very interesting to see the identifying aspect of it, something that has not been, I would say, available here in North America. I know we used to have something similar on our phones where you were able to portray the image, and it would somehow do a calculation of what kind of species it was. I forget that app. I want to say FishBrain was going down that road.
Yeah,
at one
I think
point.
so.
Well,
Yeah,
something like this, Jay, is this important? Do you need this as an angler, or is it just a cool thing to have?
So I think it depends on what level of angler you're at. I think that I know just playing around with Google Images and Google Photos, like so they do the image search on Google, so you can take a picture and search. I find that it's pretty accurate when you're dealing with sport fish. So common sport fish species that we're used to. Now, it might not be able to distinguish between a Zander, which is the European walleye, and our North American walleye. They might not be able to distinguish them because they're very similar. But but for the most part, I think that those types of photo searching apps are good for common sport fish. They're very good. But, we get into so many challenges with the FishOFF where we have these, it's a multi-species tournament. And I think a lot of those apps are not powerful enough to, where you're still going to need those judges to walk through. And I think it's important that anglers out there, especially the diehards, and maybe this is a good thing to remind anglers who participate in the FishOFF, they need to really know what pictures to take. And it's not just that side shot, and it's not just a good video, really know what ID traits to take photos of, so if it's a bullhead, you need to get pictures of that anal fin. How many anal rays does it have? Pictures of the barbels. If you're looking at, white bass and white perch, you need pictures of the anal spines. There's so many little things. And so there's a new version with the brook trout on it, but the Royal Ontario Museum Freshwater Fish Guide will actually tell you the traits. So if you go to a species, there's golden red horse.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you walk through the identifying features, it will tell you what the identifying features are. So for example, with red horse, you always want a nice picture like this to show the lateral line to do scale counts. So, I know it's in the rules where the picture must be taken from straight above, not on an angle. And a lot of that's to get those key photos done. But with practice, a lot of the judges, like they're so good, Scotty. Like I know I consult with them on time to time. They'll reach out to me for assistance, but they don't do, because I know how many entries you guys get, and I probably only get asked maybe a dozen questions a year, and it's not very many because you got great judges. And I do believe that, for some species like some of the minnow and darter species, and I do kind of like, so I'm torn on the whole 8-inch size limit because I think it restricts participation a little bit, but I also think it reduces the number of species you're going to get, which is good, because then we're going to get into like common shiner, striped shiner, for example. Like very few of them ever hit 8 inches. Smaller than that, they're harder to tell apart unless you have really good photographs. And so I think that size range is important for the FishOFF.
And so, I think, and Mike will, I know he's on here, so he'll agree with this with a thumbs up, I'm sure. We've had lots of discussion in regards to the size, requirement, if you will, to enter a fish. And Mike, in a very, professional way, has said, well, you know what, Scott, if you don't want a legal limit in terms of a size to justify and legally submit a fish, then I'm going to suggest you grab some wood, bub, and do some of the fish identification for us. Because when you get down lower than 6 and as 4 inch, you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, like I had this discussion with Trevor last week at the ROM Fish ID workshop where he was helping me, and we caught some stripe shiners and common shiners that were in that sort of 6-inch range, and in hand I can tell you what they are, but try to photograph those characters, and even though the judges know very well the difference between those two, you have to take good photos with your phone. Now, all phones can take good photos, but you sort of have to be versed at how to do that with your phone. Like, even I struggle to get good photographs sometimes. And so I think it's important that I think the size restriction is good for that reason. So, and I love the format this year too, Scotty. It really encourages a lot of people there's a lot of opportunity for different participation levels. I think before there was a real push to, you had to compete against the best of the best all the time. But now with these different steps, like 5 species, 10 species, 15 species, you can sort of set goals that suits you as an angler and your family as anglers. And I think that's really cool, man. I really like that a lot.
100%. Well, as always, Jay, we could talk for hours, you and I as a kid with all the rest of them. But in regards to that idea, of course, the wheels are spinning, and I'm thinking, I don't know, show of hands, folks, would you love to hear Jay and the judges talk shop? I know I would, especially when it comes to the photographing of fish. It's something that, we talk about a lot. Perhaps maybe we need to talk a little bit more and help those that are having issues when it comes to identifying fish. So yeah, show of hands if you guys are interested. Perhaps maybe Mike and I and the judges, and we maybe even persuade Jay with another.
There could be. I think there would be interesting, Scotty. To be serious, I think there might be a good Jason versus the judges. I don't know. Kenny and I like being on Ken's good side. I'm just going to say that. So I don't want to go against him. And in all honest truth, I am a stone cold killer when it comes to freshwater fish in Ontario and most of Canada. You get me down in the U.S. and marine species, I'm as green as they can be. I am very, very, very much tunnel vision. But I think that having a show dedicated to, important features, and I think the judges could probably go through the typical species that are problematic, like red horses and bullheads. And, there's great, the CFN FishOFF page has great, like, how to, I want to say, like, posts like bullheads. Ken's done a lot of that himself, so kudos to Ken. Mm-hmm. But maybe having a show where we actually go through those troublesome groups and actually talk it through. I don't know about you, Scotty, but I can read stuff, but I'm like a YouTube guy now. I want someone, I'm a visual learner, and I want someone to explain it to me. So that might be, CFN Fish ID School. I like that, Jeremy. That's probably a good idea.
And Jeremy, we've talked about it, but you know what? I couldn't agree more. It's definitely something that I'm proud of, is that we are helping, lead the knowledge pool, if you will, of fish identification with the FishOFF and all the judges' hard work. And of course, you as well, Jake. I can't say enough and provide you enough accolades for all the help and support that you've been when it comes to it as well.
Well, I get to dust or study up on my fish ID this week. I'm teaching species at risk identification at the Royal Ontario Museum Fish ID course this week. I'll be at the University of Guelph on Thursday, Friday teaching. So, yeah.
Please tell me walleye aren't on the list.
No. So the prerequisite for the course is you have to already have taken the ROM Fish ID workshop, which covers all the common species, and it's 2 days of very intensive fish ID to get people. And there's actually a test on the Friday afternoon. It's pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. It's a very hard test, very challenging test, but I love going because I love every year. The ROM folks, so I'm a field biologist, right? So, but working with the ROM folks, they are truly, in the ichthyology department, they are hardcore with their fish ID. So I enjoy working with those folks every year to study up again.
100%. And as Malik says, it sounds like a really cool course. It does. Well, Jay, as always, dude, I hate leaving you. I hate having to say goodbye, but the best part about it is Monday's just around the corner, and we'll get a chance to revisit with you and go over some of the stuff that we didn't get to this week. But on behalf of all of us, Jay, thanks so much for joining us, spending some time with us, and giving us some of your how-tos. It means the world.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Right on, Jay. You have yourself a great week, bud.
You too.
As always, absolute joy to do this every Monday, and it's because of you folks. Like this kind of engagement and interaction, I just absolutely love. This is what gets me. It's what keeps me doing this. I absolutely love it because of you folks. You guys make it enjoyable. Again, I'll mention it again just because Moose isn't able to join us tonight. OFC Nation Charity Tournament. The Pride of Balsam Marina is going to be the destination or pinned location of this and the Lunker Bowl that is running and hosted by CSFL. We're going to be running in tandem, same day, same stage, a little bit different concepts in regards to how we're going about entering a fish when it comes to the charity tournament. It's all measured, whereas the Lunker Bowl is all weight. Now, you could join both tournaments. You don't have to just join one or the other. You can join both, which, of course, doubles, triples, quadruples your chances of winning a prize. So again, if you love pike, you know Balsam Lake, and you're interested in spending some time with some OFC Nation or CFNers or just some old school OFCers, we invite you to come out and have a grand old time and make sure that you come hungry because we's going to feed you. Some great prizes. Thanks to the Pilata family for allowing us to do this. Of course, Moose, who's working very hard behind the scenes. And, of course, the good folks at Shimano who are going to help out with surprises. And, again, can't thank those folks enough for all they do to help us help you. On that note, have yourselves a great week. Love you all. Again, Horwood Lake Lodge CFN Retreat is in August. OFC Nation Retreat is in September. Lots of opportunities, lots of other stuff that we're going to be discussing. CFN FishOFF is right around the corner. So much going on. I just can't wait to get fishing. How about you guys? Dave, until then, take us away, buddy. All the best, folks.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.